Movies in the Midwest, films in St. Louis, the St. Louis International Film Festival, St. Louis Filmmakers Showcase. This is all part of the world of Cinema St. Louis. And joining me on the podcast today is Emmett Williams, Director of Festival Curation and Education for Cinema St. Louis, and the guy that gets to decide what movies get in these film festivals. Welcome, Emmett.
Thank you for having me. And I want to stress that it's a team of programmers that I simply lead and guide, and I do make some decisions, but we have a whole team that decides which films get in that festival.
Right. Well, you know what, folks? Stick around for this podcast episode because you're going to learn all about that team. Hey there. Welcome to the Screen Lawyer Podcast. I'm Pete Salsich, the Screen Lawyer, and my guest today is Emmett Williams, Director of Festival Curation and Education for Cinema St. Louis. It's a big title. Apparently took you quite a long time to come up with that title, right?
Well, it was hard because it's, we have 4 film festivals throughout the year. We have a lot of little weekend festivals that are really specialized. True. And we're planning on having a year-round education program. And so that's a lot to fit into one title. So
got it. Yeah. Well, that's great. So let's dig in. Let's unpack all of that. That's very cool. So what we're talking about here is an organization that's been here in St. Louis for a long time now, Cinema St. Louis. And it's probably most known, I think, for hosting the St. Louis International Film Festival, which has been put on for more than 30 years. What are we coming up on, 32, 33?
32, 33, something like that.
Yeah.
But it'll be my first one. So my first one that I am the curator of. I had a film in the festival a few years ago.
Right.
And that's when I sort of connected with the organization and sort of saw that our sort of views and what we wanted to see, but with film in St. Louis, our interests were aligned. And I've been a documentary filmmaker for a really long time.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm from St. Louis originally. And so I was like, I want to help the St. Louis film community. Yeah,
that's very cool. And that's, our interests certainly align, and we've got to know each other over the last couple of years as we both are sort of working for that same larger thing, and that's helping this community of, very talented filmmakers and production people grow their craft and see the stories like themselves on it. And I'm more involved in making sure they can run their business or get their film on screen because they've got the rights. But we both have that same interest.
Yeah, and it's all from, it's all part of a large sort of filmmaker arc. There's a great sort of group of people who are teaching people in St. Louis the basics, how to hold a camera, where to put the camera, all the basics of filmmaking. And then there's there's great organizations like St. Louis Film and Missouri Film who are helping filmmakers, write scripts and do all these other parts. And then there's, the legal things, which don't always get taught and are really difficult. And as a filmmaker, I can say that I don't want to ever think about. And so what it's great is that you're here and people don't realize how, helpful you've been to St. Louis filmmakers.
Oh, I appreciate that.
And I don't want people to asking you for free things, but I feel like I can come to you and be like,
nor do my colleagues.
Yeah, exactly. But I feel like I can come to you and say, Pete, I need this. I don't know what this legal thing is, and you're very helpful with that. And I also know that if I know a filmmaker who has some sort of legal question, I can send to you, and that you'll be fair and straight with them.
Well, I appreciate that. That is what that's what I do. That's what I want to do, right? And it's over a fairly long career now and aging. I've gotten to the point where I get to do almost all of my work in this entertainment space, and I love it because being around creative people, being part of that process. I don't hold a camera. I wouldn't know where to put a camera. You don't want me asking for advice on the script. But what I love being able to do is bring the sort of my professional ability as part of the team that helps this thing get on the screen and get people comfortable with the fact that lawyers don't have to be scary in this space. In fact, they're necessary. We're a part of the team like anything else.
And they're not only necessary as this is going to become a podcast about lawyers, which is great. This is great. But I think what a lot of sort of baby filmmakers don't understand is that you need to have a location release. You need to have a personal release. You need to have contracts maybe with your crew or people that you hire. I mean, as a documentary filmmaker, it's mainly just the personal releases and the location releases.
Right.
But I've gotten in trouble before when I, didn't have all my paperwork aligned, and I wish I had someone like you to just really simple. I could send a release or a contract to and say, "Is this legit?"
Yeah. No. Well, listen. I mean, the way the message I got when I first got into doing this part of the work was that just how awful it is to fall in love with footage that you can't use.
Yeah.
Because it's too late to go back and get that person to sign something or whatever. So, no, I'm glad that that's. I'm glad that we get the opportunity to work together to help filmmakers. And I want to focus in about the work at Cinema St. Louis and your role and some things that are coming up. So. We, as people, regular subscribers, thank you, and listeners know, we release an episode every other week. Well, this episode is going to release right before the upcoming St. Louis Filmmakers Showcase. And correct me if I'm wrong, but as I've understood it, the St. Louis International Film Festival that Cinema St. Louis puts on is in November. And that is a true international film festival. Mm-hmm. Films come from all over the world. In fact, we had... some amazing films last November that were Oscar nominated.
Yep.
The Holdovers.
And American Fiction.
Mm-hmm. And when the directors of these amazing films are standing in front of the audience doing a Q&A in a packed, beautiful old theater, it's kind of magical.
It's really special, and I think that people don't realize that those are might not be the world premieres, but they're the St. Louis premieres of these films, and we have, there's some of those things happening this year.
Yeah.
It's really exciting. And Holdovers was packed. American Fiction sold out last year. It's just, it's a really special thing. Yeah. And it only happens once a year here in St. Louis, where you really get to feel like you're watching something that, nobody else in the world is seeing.
They're going to see it soon, but you got there early. Yeah, that's exactly. A really cool thing. And so it's an international film festival, very competitive to get in. Mm-hmm. But then what's coming up, which will be just in a couple of days when the episode drops, is the St. Louis Filmmakers Showcase, which is, I think, in its 24th year. Mm-hmm. And that is a similar sort of week-long, 2 weekends collection of many films to see, shorts, docs, full-length narratives, everything else. But all of the films have some connection to St. Louis, either the filmmaker or the story or something. Isn't that right? That's
correct. We get about 118 submissions. It's St. Louis filmmaker based over the last year. So, the opening night film Lions of Mesopotamia, the team that edited the film, the post-production team, is based in St. Louis, and that's the St. Louis connection. It's an amazing film, debuted at South by Southwest this year. Just really incredible story of the Iraqi Civil War and how the Iraqi community sort of like rallied around this soccer team.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really, really amazing film. And so after the film, not only will we have people who were there in Iraq during the Civil War, we'll be talking to do a Q&A, but also the editing team.
Wow.
So part of the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase is not just sort of giving a space for St. Louis filmmakers to have their work on screen, but it's also about educating. So we want filmmakers to be there to learn from the editing team about what that process was like to work on a huge international feature that's going to be in theaters someday. So
wow, that's very cool. And that's what I love about the showcase in the summer is it feels to me a little bit more like the local community all stepping up and applauding each other, cheering each other. You see certain people in more than one film where if you look closely at the credits, you see that somebody that was a writer on this one was a grip on, they're just all helping.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. And isn't it the case that some of the films in the showcase that are winners of certain awards, they then get invited to the film festival in November?
The last day of the festival, we're giving out 11 awards that include Best Film, Best Actor, Best Animation, Best Experimental Film, but we're also giving out for the first time the Mayor's Award. I'm partnering with the Mayor's office, and the Mayor may be there. Right now we think she's going to be there to hand out the award for the Best Student Film. So
nice.
we're also working with all of the universities in the city to we sort of made sure that all the students knew and had a way to submit their films and to choose some of the best student films. So we're really about making sure that not only does everybody see themselves on the screen, but also everybody in St. Louis knows that they have a chance to have their film on the screen.
I think that is to me, that is as important as any other message in the process, is that this is possible. And, you and I've talked about, and I've talked about on this podcast, the fact that late last year, the new Missouri film tax credit, the Missouri Motion Media tax credit, technically because it's both film and series, went into action. And now we have not only talent, but we've got this tax credit, which is a tremendous financial resource. You have to understand how it works, right? And it elevates the need for maybe local filmmakers who never really understand the classic role of the producer. Putting the whole thing together before you start rolling any camera, right? But when that's available, the level of films that both come into town and that get made here, and the people who may see themselves, hey, I don't have to leave to do this for a living. I can make a career here in this, field that I love, right here in town. So the showcase is a huge way for people to see that.
It is. It's I started my career in New York City, and I was making TV and film there, and it's just so much easier to do it in a place that you can afford to live. If I'm honest, I got to the point where I didn't have to, because I was living in a place that was more affordable, I didn't have to take a second job because I, could, that sort of thing. And so staying here, there's so many advantages. Also, if you do need to get to the coast or Chicago, we're equidistant from everywhere. It's really a great place to be a filmmaker. And also there's outside of, looking outward for your success, there's a really great ecosystem here that is doing a lot of great work. And like you said, there's a lot of filmmakers that are actors in a few different things. Right. And so it's really exciting what's happening here. And that's been, I just started the job in January, and so that's been one of the, not surprises, but one of the best parts about learning and listening from the community is that there's a lot of stuff already happening here, and my job is just to support it in any way, best way possible.
I think that's great, and so I want to talk kind of about what your job is like. Years ago, I had when I was a young lawyer, I was involved in a case, long-running lawsuit involving comic books. Spawn, we represented Image Comics and Todd McFarlane, and one of my jobs for a week, I kid you not, still maybe my favorite week as a lawyer in some ways, was I got to read all 200 plus issues of Spawn Comics in order and take some notes about how many times this character showed up, because the lawsuit had to do with certain things like that. But it was all billable. So I'm getting my timesheets, read Spawn Comics 9.4. It was like, wow, it was awesome. So and I say that because that was 1 week, and then I had to go back to all this stuff. But part of your job is just watching films.
It is. For the St. Louis International Film Festival, we get about 2,500 submissions.
Holy cow.
For the St. Louis Filmmaker Showcase, we got 118, but then there's also Q-Fest that we take submissions for. And so I do joke that my job is to sit in my pajamas and watch films all day. And there is a lot of film watching. There is a lot. That is a huge part of my job, but it's also the reason that, curating is in the title is because it's not just choosing the best film. It's choosing how this film will work in St. Louis, how it might, if it's a short, how it's going to work with other films. Okay. I just watched this really amazing film for the St. Louis International. And maybe I shouldn't be saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's true. But I think film programmers, curators get a lot of grief/hate sometimes because they don't choose somebody's film.
Sure, I can imagine.
And I've been on that side also. I've been how come you didn't take my film? It should have fit there. But there's so many different things that go into it. It's not just the quality of the film. It's also where it would fit into a program.
Sure.
can it sell in St. Louis?
Right.
Is it going to work? I just watched this really amazing film that I won't get the details before, but I was like, it was, sort of on the border between great and good. And the whole time I'm watching it, I'm thinking, I don't know if St. Louis is going to come out for this film. Like sometimes things just don't work.
Yeah.
And every festival goes through that. And that's just the thing that filmmakers
It's such
have to realize. It's a film, like the sort of the quote that is in, the film festival programming books that exist. There are 3 of them, or 2 of them. There's a festival for every film, but not every festival can take every film. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like some things just don't fit. And so when the hardest part of my job is telling filmmakers that they didn't get into the festivals.
Yeah.
But the best part of my job is when a letter from a filmmaker saying, thank you so much, I worked so hard on this, I really appreciate you, putting into the film. And so, yeah, it's great. But also, for Showcase, we had a lot of student films, films from all over the city. And so I don't do this for anybody else but students, but I told every student that if they wanted to talk about their film and why they didn't get in, they could come to me and we would talk about it. And it was really great.
Do many of them take you up on that?
About half of them did. And they wrote these really sincere emails that just make you want to help them grow their career.
Right.
And so my goal is to sort of take their hand and make them the filmmakers that they want to be.
Yeah.
And so it's not just saying this could have been different on your film. It's about like, how can we help your career grow? So we're working with all the universities in the city to sort of say, what can we do for you? How can we serve your students? How can we help them become part of the St. Louis film community? So that's the other best part of my job.
Yeah, that's really cool. I like, I, for a long time now, have regularly gone out to Webster University and then recently to Lindenwood to speak to their film programs, just for like a guest lecture for a session about what I talk about, right? Yeah. Understanding your contracts and how copyright works and those sorts of things. Because I agree with you. I mean, there's the part of, it's not just, this lighting could have been better or whatever, but it's also understanding what it might be like to have a career here.
Yeah.
And what are some things that you want to master or things that you need at least to understand.
Yeah.
So that you feel confident in going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think another thing that should be included in those conversations is, what does success look like?
Oh, sure.
Because for some people, unless they're a celebrity or a star, that's what success means to you.
Right.
But 1% of whatever the number is of everybody who wants to be a professional doing this becomes a celebrity. It's less than 1%.
Right.
It's point something 1%. But there's so many different ways to be successful as a filmmaker.
Sure.
And I think that's something that people should also think about. Like, what does that mean to them?
Well, I think, and I'm glad you said that, because one of the things I think that hopefully the new film tax credit helps our region understand, and really statewide, is that this is in fact an industry. It's a huge industry. Mm-hmm. I've heard other people use this term. I like it a lot. It's a 21st century trade, right? Mm-hmm. You've got young people that for whom maybe traditional college is not this thing, but you know what? They've been filmmakers since they could pick up their parents' iPad and start, telling stories. Yeah. But here's a way to marshal that into a genuine career, right? Mm-hmm. That can be really can be lucrative. You can raise your family and have a great time doing what makes you happy and proud to be creative. And it's such a team. One of the first things that blew me away when I got into younger in my career, I was doing entertainment-related things, but they were mostly lawsuits. When I started working more with production companies and understanding what went into a set, I don't think I had any appreciation about how much of a teamwork effort it is, because before I knew any of this, I didn't watch all the credits after the cast. Yeah. I didn't watch now I watch all the credits because I just love the fact that there's so many people involved, and you see that on a regular basis. I mean, you said you have a team even for your group.
Yeah. So even as my career as a filmmaker, it started out just I wanted to write TV shows, and I did, but it wasn't sort of as fulfilling as I wanted. And then I went to be a documentary filmmaker, and that was more what I wanted, but also I was still doing a lot of different things on the side. I made films for nonprofits. There was some sort of international organizations I made things for. There's so many different ways to make a living as a filmmaker, and I think it's really important that filmmakers see that there's so many different options. And now that I have a job for the first time in 10 years.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. I see the curation part as an extension of the storytelling that I want to see in the world. And so that's one of the things that I love about this. Is I really get to be creative, trying to figure out which films can work here and there. What can I do to help filmmakers be the best filmmakers they can be? How we can build community in St. Louis. So it's all an extension of what I would be doing anyway.
That's amazing to think about that, because I think there is a story to tell that. And part of that story is that this is a place to make films.
Yeah.
This is a place to tell stories. This is a place to, do television, we all spend so much time on our screens, which leads me to my last question, which I didn't prep before, which is good. So what I like to ask people as we wind things up, first of all, thank you.
No, thank you for having me.
For coming in today. This has been terrific. Hope everybody's found it educational. One of the things that I like to do, I call myself a screen lawyer. My work is involved with things getting on screens. And screens are everywhere, right? iPads, phones, what's on your wall. So I'd like to ask people, what's on your screen? And you get to decide what I mean by that. If your brain goes, it's what I was just game on my phone, I can't stop. Or it's whatever I'm watching on the wall at the end of the day when I want to shut it down. Or what's on my screen at work. What's on your screen, Emmett?
This is going to be such a long answer. I'm so sorry about the outtakes that are going to be. So it depends on which screen and where I am.
Okay.
So my sort of general goal is to work/watch films for SLIF and Showcase up until like 9 o'clock-ish.
Okay.
It sounds like that I'm 12 hours of watching films, but sometimes that's what it is. So during the day, I'm watching films that are potentially for the St. Louis International Film Festival.
So that's for work.
That's for work. So that's on that screen, and then I try and take a break and watch. I'm going to watch a serious film now because I'm a lot. But then, at the end of the day, I just want to watch Modern Family reruns.
Nice.
Or Game of Thrones reruns, because the first time I didn't get all the names.
Sure.
And so now I'm watching it with captions, and so and then,
are you a House of Dragons fan? Are you current on?
I'm watching it. I don't love it, but it's one of the things where I'll keep watching just to find out who kills who. But I
did you see the most recent? I don't know if we should put spoilers in.
Yeah, I don't love it, but I'll keep watching it.
Yeah.
And so, but there are some really. There's great films showing at the Hi-Pointe. Brett Smith is doing an amazing job of curation here.
So we should make sure we highlight that before we go.
Yeah.
Real quick. So the Hi-Pointe Theatre, traditional classic old theater, one of maybe the only one still standing in town.
Yeah.
One of the few anywhere.
Yeah. It's over 100 years old.
That is... Cinema St. Louis recently acquired it as the home base. So now the film festival and the showcase, that's where the events are. That's the highlight. There's programming elsewhere in town, right? Because you have too many things going on for only one screen.
Yeah.
But it is such a cool place.
It's such a cool place. And Brett Smith came on from when I came on.
Okay.
And he is the theater director. But I'm not sure if that's his title. And I'm sorry, Brett, I'm sorry for that I haven't memorized your title. But he programs the day-to-day of the Hi-Pointe, and it's his curation is so good. It's if I didn't, work there sometimes or getting free, I would be there anyway. The films he's been choosing the last 6 months have been incredible. Also, we have the best popcorn in this city.
Absolutely, 100%.
So that's another
and
screen.
Really comfortable seats.
Yeah, really comfortable seats. So if I'm going to a movie theater, that's often where I'm going. So that's that screen. But I also on my iPad, there's a lot of talk about streaming.
Yeah.
and how like none of the streamers, except for maybe Netflix, are really figuring out how to make it work financially.
Yeah.
And that's a whole other conversation.
Oh, that part of the business
about
is
like
wild. Yeah.
what to do with your film once your film
distribution.
is made.
Yeah.
Distribution.
Yeah.
But I'm on YouTube a lot. YouTube, they know what I want to watch, and so I'm actually on YouTube a lot.
And if you haven't already, you're going to hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. You get all the Screen Lawyer stuff. Good.
Yep.
See, folks, that's how you do it.
Yeah, well done. I subscribe to you on Apple Podcasts.
Well, good. Yeah. Actually, even better. Well, no, you can do both, right?
I'm going to do both now. As soon as
now that you know that you'll be eye candy, you can be part of that. Yes. Hey, this has been fantastic, Emmett. Thank you.
No,
I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to folks. We spent a lot of time talking about how the films get made or the legal issues that come up, but hearing more about after they've been made, how they end up on the screen, how the presentation side of the industry.
Yeah, like making the film is not even half the battle. It's like once you make your film, it's getting people to see it.
Yeah.
And that's like when the real work starts. Like I've definitely made films that nobody saw that I'm proud of the work.
Right.
But literally nobody saw because I just didn't have a distribution plan.
Right.
I wasn't that organized. I didn't have a lawyer. So.
And that's a role that like the festivals play.
Yeah.
They play a really important part of that role.
Yeah.
So that's very cool. Folks, if you want more information, it's cinemastlouis.org, right?
Yep.
Cinema, STLouis.org. We'll put that in the show notes. Lots of information there about the showcase, about the festival. We've been a proud sponsor for a number of years now. I really value that relationship.
Yeah.
If you like the podcast, as Emmett does, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts on audio. Find and follow us there. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. We'd love to have you be in your ears and in your eyes more often. And you can always find information about all the things we do at thescreenlawyer.com. Thanks, Emmett.
Thanks for having me, Pete.
All right. See you at the festival.
See you then.
All right. Take care, folks.